I'd like to thank you all for coming. My name is Mark Isaacson. I am proud to be the director of the Wastewater Treatment Division and serve the residents of King County as well as southern Snohomish County as that director. That is the way that I have typically introduced myself to the county council at those pleasurable times when I've had the opportunity to provide testimony before them. Today is an event that I would much rather be talking with you about, and because it is about us moving forward with a number of really specific challenges for which we're asking for the consultant community to help us out. I am proud to work as a division director to serve in such a special capacity, not only in the public health mission and the public environmental mission that we have, but also because of our employees. The dedicated employees that serve this division are nothing short of outstanding, and I've served with nobody less in their integrity as well as their knowledge of the systems they work throughout my many years. I'll just leave it at that, many years. So welcome and thank you for this. I'm going to start off. I've only got a couple slides, and really the content and the business end of what we're talking about comes later, and comes with my colleagues who I'm going to introduce you to. Now I'm going to hit with this, I am going to ask, obviously I'm Mark, these are the topics that we're going to be covering today. I'm not going to read them to you. You can all read. But I would like to introduce Steve Toltzman. Please stand up. Steve will be talking through many aspects. He will be our project manager and talk about our comprehensive planning. I would also like to ask Annie Kolb-Nelson to stand. Annie is our public information officer. She handles all of our external media, as well as she does some of our public relations work as well, and specializes in communication planning with the external group. And she'll be a key person talking today as well as a part of this overall process. Next will be Sonia Abenar. Please stand. Sonia will be talking about an initiative and how we want to incorporate equity and social justice as a concept, but also as a reality, both in our organization as a part of this project. Very important to our executive and very important to our organization's leadership and staff as we move forward. And finally, we're going to have Crystal Marino. Crystal, please talk from our procurement office. Just met, so I'm talking about procurement, accounts payable, all the good stuff that makes it all happen. I think, I am relatively new to this industry, but I'm happy to be here, of course. I think those of you who I do know this system very, very well. But there's a couple of key points here. Mission is long-held mission, and around public health and protecting and enhancing the environment. I've been asked to go over these slides just to set the appropriate context so that everybody understood the ground rules. However, I think that there's some key points that I'd like to make on this one. That is, over 60 years of work has gone into play here, and over 60 years of accumulated knowledge both in the consultant community as well as in our staff. Operations and maintenance, we're a staff of 750 people. Over half of them are our operations and maintenance crews who do that work and do the work, and they do it very well. And they maintain over $6 billion worth of assets. We create resources from the wastewater that we collect and treat. And finally, the last bullet there is investing in the resource infrastructure that we have, which brings us to our challenge that we have today. Our map, I guess really most of you can't see this. And the point of this map is really, it's regional. It's a big system. When I talk about it with other folks, we're not just the city of Seattle. We're not just, the city of Seattle, which gets to be a big deal when we have combined sewer overflows. But we also serve 34 component agencies throughout the region, and there are various aspects of it. You can read, of course, the number of facilities that we have and maintain. Finally, I want to get to the crux of my point. And my point is several here. We have, you can see the challenge, how to increase the rate of infrastructure spending with all the demands that we have in a rate that's affordable. I don't want to be in a position, of course, to propose something to do this and this and this and this, and 50% of the people can't afford the rate. Not only is it not going to work, it won't pass, it doesn't show the forethought that we need to put into it. But more importantly, this isn't a question. Oh, I get another microphone.
Yeah, this isn't seem to be working too well.
Well, can y'all hear me anyway? Yeah? This is like a press conference deal. I don't like those. No, they're fine. So the, where was I? The aging infrastructure. Oh, but by the way, it's expressed as a question mark. It's not. We really don't have a choice. We've got $6 billion in assets. We have a public who expects us to treat and convey wastewater in such a manner that protects public health and keeps it out of their basements. And we're expected, and we have a mission to improve the environment as we go along. It is not a short shrift thing to do. It is hard to do. But I fully believe that we're capable of doing it. We just have some challenges. First being aging infrastructure. Along with that 60 years of knowledge and understanding, both with you and the consultant community and our staff, and the people who have worked here, and the new people who are acquiring that knowledge. The age of the system is getting there, and it's showing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, nor have we ignored asset management. I would like to make that very clear. We have an asset management program. It's good. Perhaps it might not be at the right level, and we're re-looking at how to do it. And we've got a lot of good ideas, and we've got a lot of money to expend in some of the assets that we're obligated to maintain. It comes at a price. Current and future regulatory requirements. This largely speaks to the current regulatory environment that we have, for which we have a CSO program, which is not insignificant. By 2030, we have to control all of our CSOs throughout the region. We're well along, and we are going to fully comply with the commitments that we have. I've certainly been not empowered to change those commitments. But as I have mentioned to staff, if that's one of the areas that we can look at doing differently, we are obligated to look at that and perhaps do it differently, perhaps not. But unless we ask the question on that current regulatory environment, how could we move forward? How could we move forward with maintaining our assets, maintaining both capacity issues as well as the obligation for water quality, and still meet the water quality requirements? It's a thorny issue. The future, well, I don't have a crystal ball up here, but I'll tell you a lot of talk there, and many of you, I think, know it better than I do. The future may well hold nutrient removal, and what does that mean for an agency like us? It means a lot. It means a lot in a tight place like West Point. Managing the stormwater in the CSO program, a colleague who I have worked with made it very clear to me. He goes, you know, sometimes I feel like we're more of a stormwater treatment agency than we are a wastewater treatment agency. And sometimes it gets to feel that way. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's the way the system was designed, and it's working well. The ability to meet those stormwater challenges is a part of our growing regional challenge, is one that we need to address. We have a steeply growing population. Now, many might suspect that that adds a lot of waters to our system. It actually has not. It's shown a significant growth in solids that you can expect from just human biology in our system. Faster, much faster, at a rate much more steep than we anticipated. And we're meeting capacity points at that point. Finally, we need a resilient system. I had the opportunity to be the director of Wastewater Treatment Division on February 9th when we had a significant flood at West Point. Resiliency was identified as a major problem. Our county council, our public, ourselves, we all want to fix. We all want to add resiliency to that system, both at West Point in a confined space, confined place, but also throughout our entire system. So that's our challenge. It's not an easy one. When we sat back and looked at all that was coming, we asked ourselves, could we do this alone? Could we update our system planning effort without the additional help? And the staff suggested that, no, we need additional help, and they all know you, and they know the type of knowledge and expertise that you bring. So with that, I think I'm turning it over to Steve.
All right, great. Mark did a fantastic job of orienting everybody, and as I go through the presentation and talk more about the approach and our thinking, I'm going to try to weave in the themes that Mark laid out about our challenge. Before getting into that approach, I want to get to the consultant services we expect to orient everybody on that side of it, and then we'll get into what we're thinking about this scope of work is going to look like, or our current thinking of that. Broadly, the consultant services anticipated are listed on this slide. We've got technical services towards a comprehensive system plan, and we've got some public engagement services there. I'm going to go through a couple more slides here and lay out a little more detail on each of those. On the technical services side, we are looking for a utility planning specialist and somebody who is versed in strategic planning, somebody who knows strategic planning techniques such as scenario planning, somebody who's familiar with current industry management thoughts and philosophies such as effective utility management. So we're looking for somebody who has those types of that type of knowledge base, and somebody who's applied that type of knowledge base on a large regional wastewater system that includes treatment facilities. The planning engineer is generally that same type of person, but more of an engineer. But again, the engineer should be a planning engineer, somebody who's worked on sewer master plans for large regional wastewater utilities with treatment systems involved. We have additional more specific technical staff listed there, a wastewater process engineer and also an asset management specialist. Obviously those are important parts of the work that Mark referenced as part of our challenge, and we'll need that technical expertise. The word affordability, Mark mentioned it a couple times. I will continue to mention that as I go through. Affordability is a big part of this, so we have a utilities economist and a finance person listed here. A utilities economist should be experienced in applying affordability analyses, knowing different methods of which to go about those analyses, the pros and cons of those different methods, etc. On the financial side, we want to see a financial person who can understands rate structures, overall financial planning for a utility. And both of those people, the economist and the financial person, should be versed in triple bottom line analysis, full social cost accounting, those types of techniques. We have environmental scientist and sustainability planner listed. So here, a lot of our challenge is both affordability and delivering water quality benefits, water quality protection, as well as community benefits. So we'll be asking the question, what are the benefits we're getting for different types of investments? So we'll need environmental scientists, water quality expertise, and sustainability expertise in order to help us with those analysis and answer those questions. The public engagement specialist and strategic communication planner, my colleague Annie Kolb-Nelson, is going to follow me, and she'll walk you through more on what we're looking at there. I guess I'm going to stop and take a break for a moment and do something I should have done when I got started. Number one is we're going to email everybody the PowerPoint after this is over, so you don't have to write everything down that's on the slides. You'll get that. And number two is we're going to break after each of the next speakers and do some intermediate questions then, and then we'll follow with more questions at the end. So, apologies, should have done that first. Okay, contract value and schedule. So everything I'm saying is the best thinking the wastewater treatment division has done to date. We are going to do more thinking about this before an RFP comes out, so all of this would be clarified in an RFP. But with that said, we are anticipating 2 contracts, one on the utility planning, strategic planning, engineering planning services, and one on regional engagement, public affairs, public participation. We anticipate the total value of those contracts to be between $2 and $4 million. We'd like to get started on this work in 2018. We hope to have one of the contracts advertised in the first half of 2018. Unlikely that it would be the first quarter of 2018, but certainly the first half. And then we expect from when the contracts are actually signed and work has begun, it would be a 2 to 4 year process on that. Okay, so with that, I wanted to shift gears now and share with you Wastewater Treatment Division's current thinking on the scope of work for this project. So the purpose is listed here on the slide, and it aligns, I hope, pretty well with the items that Mark Isaacson was going through in our challenge. And we're going to talk about what Wastewater Treatment Division is thinking and how we're going to address this purpose, and get on a path to meet our challenge. I'm going to do a little bit of orientation first. The last time the Wastewater Treatment Division did a comprehensive system-wide plan was in 1999, and that was the Regional Wastewater Services Plan. Much has been accomplished since the Regional Wastewater Service Plan was passed. The Regional Wastewater Services Plan called for a third regional treatment facility. We have that now. It's Brightwater. Also called for a number of combined sewer overflow projects and conveyance system improvement projects, and we have done a number of those, and that work is ongoing. However, there have been some changed conditions since 1999, both with the utility and the region. Mark highlighted a few of these that tie back to our challenge. Regulations, both current and future. At the time of the RWSP, we did not have a CSO consent decree. We might have had some preliminary knowledge of nutrient removal at treatment plants, but it wasn't as present as it is now. We also, the utility has aged since 1999. Again, getting at our asset management resiliency, coupled with our West Point flooding, tells us our aging infrastructure is also another good reason to take a look at the system comprehensively. With respect to the region, we've seen we see the region continues to grow and continues to be a very, very robust region, and that's excellent for the economy, but maybe not excellent for everybody. So affordability is talked about in the region now much more than it was talked about in 1999. So putting things through an affordability lens that we have not done previously with our system planning. Want to keep building on the background here and go down a level from our regional wastewater services plan and talk about things that have been ongoing within the wastewater treatment division that will be foundational and need to be built on as part of this system planning effort. So the slide here has a lot of factors pointing into the system plan. I mentioned with the RWSP, our conveyance system improvement program and our combined sewer overflow program. Both of those have been doing additional planning work since the RWSP, and that needs to be factored into this. We also have our strategic asset management plan that's ongoing. We have a treatment plant flows and loads study that's essentially looking at capacity at our regional wastewater treatment facilities. That will need to be factored in. We have a capacity charge affordability study. Right now, the only fee the wastewater treatment division directly charges customers is the capacity charge on new homes in the region. We're looking specifically at affordability of that. That would be foundational to this as we explore the larger affordability question. King County itself has broader initiatives. The wastewater treatment division is one part of King County, but King County's broader initiatives include the Strategic Climate Action Plan, or SCAP. It also includes our Equity and Social Justice Strategic Plan. And Sonia Benahar will be giving more details on equity and social justice here later. King County initiatives, again, foundational and inputs into the plan. So as you can see, there's a lot that's going to go into the process, inform the process, and then we need the creative thinking to grow from there. Okay, so a little bit on our current thinking on how we would go about this work, how we would scope this work. We have got broadly a two-part process here. It opens with a part one, a scenario planning process that gives us the opportunity to take a higher level look at things and do an initial level of analysis, and then flows into what I would call a more traditional infrastructure planning process, where we're doing more detailed analysis and have more, more specific planning level results. I'm going to go through several slides here and try to illustrate and explain our current thinking on this approach a little bit more. So the scenario planning part of the analysis, here where we're going is we recognize that the region has changed, therefore perhaps the solutions have changed to the problems. We've done a good job at looking at these problems, some of these related problems over the years, but we're acknowledging that some of these problems need a fresh look. Maybe we need to take some of the boundaries away that we previously had and explore them deeper, explore them in different directions, and test them a little bit more. So that's the goal of this scenario planning part. It's going to be a higher level, think feasibility analysis, not a detailed technical analysis. And then it's going to be key here that these are developed with the region and with input from King County leadership, and they're discussed with the King County leadership in the region so that people can understand the implications of the different paths. So we'll be looking for a consultant team that can help us with the scenario planning process, help us convene the process, organize the process, be able to do the analysis, develop materials that we can communicate with the public and decision makers about what these different paths towards water quality protection for the region look like. I want to continue to talk about the scenarios a little bit more. So the bottom line of what we're trying to communicate here is the scenarios that we want to develop. In the end, we want them to be different from one another so that we can be comparing different things. So we have a Pentagon here, and some of our driving forces that again relate back to our challenge are listed on the outside of the polygon. Within the polygon, we have we have generically plotted scenarios. So we haven't made any foregone conclusions about scenarios. This is all illustrative. So we have scenario 1 in the center. Let's say we're going to do everything, we're going to maximize, we're going to do everything equally. That's scenario 1, where we're equalizing all of our driving forces. But then we want to spread out and compare differences and see what would happen. So for instance, scenario 3, the concept there is that's a balance between affordability, equity, water quality protection, and our asset management and resiliency. Contrast that with scenario number 2, where that's centered between affordability and resource recovery and sustainability. So you see what we're going for here is a team that can come in, develop these different pathways, make sure they are distinguished from one another, and then help lay out how they're different, what the implications of them are, and then help us through a regional discussion of that. I will note one thing here, just to make sure it's clear that none of this is foregone conclusions. I couldn't quite animate this figure to make all of these driving forces move around, but this is not to say that you're locked into only having a scenario with resource recovery and affordability. You can move those driving forces around, and you can have different scenarios that emphasize different items. Within the range of concepts to be considered in the scenario development, a list of categories is on the slide here, and we want to just put out these categories so everybody kind of gets a feel for the range of what we're thinking. But within them, there's many ideas, and again, we're going to be looking for a consultant team to help develop those ideas and bring those ideas to us and vet them with us. So for example, on demand and capacity management, Mark mentioned that sometimes it feels like we're a stormwater utility. That's a big part of our demand and capacity management. We need to think about, are we a stormwater utility? How would you change that? How could you change that? Same thing in our separated system with inflow and infiltration, thinking about different ways to approach that problem than we have in the past. Alternate financial models. I mentioned the capacity charge is one, is currently King County's only way we're directly billing customers, and we're doing an affordability analysis on that. Is there an alternate financial model where the county can work with our 34 regional partners on some sort of rate relief if we move forward with a heavy capital burden? Also, asset management and resiliency, taking a look at how to add redundancy to the system in a way that delivers a more resilient system. So those are just a few examples, but again, we want to make sure this is a broad thinking going into this process. Want to shift to the traditional infrastructure planning side. I know for myself, this is the part I'm more familiar with. I think most people are. This is kind of the classic identify a need, come up with some alternatives to meet those needs, run it through an analysis process, financing plan, and come out. So That's more or less what we're doing because affordability and financing is so important to this. We need to come out with a financing plan. However, with that scenario planning process in front of it, we hope to come out with 2 to 3 scenarios that we develop further into alternatives, so add additional engineering detail appropriate to a plan, and then run that through this traditional infrastructure planning approach. A couple other big picture things to think about. The wastewater treatment division's acknowledging at the beginning that affordability is an issue, but we're also acknowledging we're not the only entity in the region providing regional infrastructure. There's a number of other utilities and other entities that provide regional infrastructure. Those need to be given consideration from a rate standpoint, from a community benefit standpoint, from an environmental standpoint. And how that's going to be done is going to be another part of the consultant's task. How it's going to be done and then actually doing it and giving them consideration and making that part of the regional discussion. If we give all the money in the region to water quality protection for a utility rate, what's left for everybody else, and vice versa, those sorts of things. A little orientation to the process. This illustrates a linear process, and I can guarantee you this won't be a linear process when we get into it. However, this is just for the sake of our presentation today to communicate a couple things on our advisory level and our decision-making level. So we have WTD staff and our consultant team will be working on plan development, and then we'll be utilizing an advisory services throughout the region. One would be a regional leaders forum, and Annie Kolb-Nelson's going to get into that in just a few moments. And then the other is just general public engagement. So we're going to need expertise to help us organize those groups, and the technical people that work on this project are going to need to be able to speak to those groups and interact with those groups. And then at the decision-making level, we've got King County leadership, both the King County executive and executive staff. The Wastewater Treatment Division Management, the Department of Natural Resources and Parks Management would all be involved at the decision-making level, as well as, of course, the King County Council. So began with the purpose. I'm going to conclude my part with the expected outcomes, and I think all this, again, kind of matches back with what Mark Isaacson laid out as our challenge. I'll throw it out there in a couple other different ways. Number one, we're looking to see where we can get the most community benefit for the investments we make in the regional wastewater system. And number two, we want to deliver regional water quality protection at an affordable rate. Okay, so we're going to pause there, and we can take a few questions on that segment. And then we're going to get into Annie and the Regional Leaders Forum and public engagement. But if anybody has any clarifying questions at this point, we're happy to take them.
Hi, I'm Annie Kolb-Nelson, and I am here today to talk about the public affairs and community engagement aspect of our system planning effort. And so I think Steve was pretty succinct in his description of all the changes that we've experienced as a region since the original system plan that we're currently operating under was adopted back in 1999. And so, we're just looking at a really rapidly growing region where growth has met or even exceeded, in some cases, our expectations. We're also looking at changing demographics and as well just general affordability within the region. It's becoming a very expensive place to live. And so we want to make sure that our planning effort moving forward is reflecting these new realities. And so the heart of our vision for our public affairs and public engagement strategy would be a regional leaders forum to involve people from a really wide array of expertise and experience to help us shape decision-making moving forward. And it would be an advisory role that would help inform the system planning team, but also be the basis of recommendations that would go to the King County executive for decision making. So this regional leaders forum, we see it being composed of elected officials, representatives from city governments, government agencies, environmental groups, nonprofit organizations, and businesses and environmental groups, and even community members. So the idea with this is that we would compile this group to help us start a regional dialogue about system investment priorities and environmental outcomes, and as well to help us better understand some of the trade-offs that come with that. And their ideas would be the basis of the recommendations that would go forward to the executive. And they would also help to set the criteria for which recommendations go on to the next level. So this is a pretty important role, and it would really be the core of the decision-making framework for the executive. And part of the work that would come out of the Regional Leaders Forum too would be to help inform a separate but somewhat parallel track of a broader community engagement effort. And so basically also getting the broader community involved and having their voices reflected in the decision making that also goes to the executive. So this is going to be a really big job for the consultant team that takes on this component of work. So to get into a little bit about the responsibilities as we see them, obviously the first one would be working very closely with the project team, which would be composed of King County employees. So it would be county leadership, planners, engineers, public engagement professionals, and public affairs professionals. And it would be really important to us that the consultant team have the ability to navigate the technical and the kind of more human side and more creative side, because we really want to be able to get good information out to the Regional Leaders Forum members and take technical information, really wonky information that maybe not everybody on that group has experience with, and get it to a level where they can understand and provide meaningful feedback. The second thing would be to help us recruit and convene the Regional Leaders Forum. So helping us recruit the members that would actually be on that team. And also running all the meeting logistics that would be entailed in that particular body of work. So convening the meetings, facilitating the meetings, taking meeting notes, producing meeting minutes and formal reports when needed. And I think probably the most important aspect out of that would be the facilitation, because it's going to be the skilled facilitation that is going to help the Regional Leaders Forum members be able to provide the most meaningful feedback, since this is going to be really the advisory body to the executive. Next would be strategic communication, and we would want a consultant team who would be very skilled in actual strategic communication, starting with research, to help us identify potential audiences that we need to reach, directions that we need to go. We would want the consultant team to help us identify community engagement concepts or techniques, help us also come up with ideas for media or social media campaigns that would be part of that. And then on that note, we would want a consultant team who could take the planning and actually implement it. So working with us to implement the plans through public affairs and public engagement, and actually doing some of those activities with us and working with our teams to kind of be on the ground. So that would be public meetings, public events, digital engagement, could be online open houses, presence at community fairs or festivals, and we would also want a consultant team that would be available to help us represent the county in some of those venues. And last on the list, but certainly among the most important, as Steve and Mark pointed out, is our equity and social justice. King County has an equity and social justice strategic plan that sets the goals for how we do engagement. We want to make sure that our community engagement is inclusive and that it reflects the voices of people broadly throughout the region, and particularly people who have traditionally been underserved by county government. And in fact, this is such an important component that my colleague Sonia Benohar will be up here in a few moments to talk about that specifically. So just to kind of go over staffing, we would want people with expertise in strategic communication planning, public affairs, public relations, very high level, people who are very skilled at public engagement, meaningful public engagement, that two-way conversation that's going to really need to be core at shaping the decisions that go to the executive. And then also utility policy or government relations experience is also going to be very, very important in helping us effectively outreach to some of the government agencies and other elected bodies and cities. The outcome that we're seeking is a decision-making framework that is demonstrably inclusive, reflects a broad range of voices, and that is shaped by diverse stakeholders. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sonia Benohar, and I'm a capital project manager for Wastewater Treatment Division, as well as the Equity and Action and Implementation Committee representative. Let's see. So when we think about equity and social justice in our work in wastewater, we have to set it in the context of what we know now compared to what we didn't know in the past. So thinking about the context of the 1999 plan that we're working on now, we now know that there's disproportionality that exists in our region by race, by income, by language, disability, education, etc. We now have a pro-equity policy that guides our work and decision-making to confront the historical and racial inequities that are that affect us all and that affect our region's ability to thrive. So by just looking at this one map, we have an abundance of data that is unprecedented to us, and our goal is to use it to inform our decision-making in this plan and within our division. So we can see that disproportionality exists by income. This is just one map, so if we were to create maps based on education or health or environmental impacts, we would be able to identify that disproportionality exists in those parameters and use it to inform our decision makings with this comprehensive plan. We want to be intentional about our work and not only recognize the physical locations of our projects and where they exist, but also the community context in which our facilities sit. Who are our ratepayers and who do our facilities serve? How does our work impact their quality of life? So being really intentional about the data that we do have and use it to our advantage when we're making these really important decisions. While we're still in the process of trying to define what this system plan looks like I said, we're going to be very intentional about the way we evaluate our systems and prioritize the different elements and drivers that generate our system plan. And we want to use equity and social justice considerations, strategies, and goals in every step of the process. We expect this process to be just and inclusive. And like Annie said, we want to consistently take action to eliminate the root causes of inequities through this work. Equity and social justice will be an important part of the evaluation proposal. And we want to see that your team has demonstrated a commitment to having a diverse staff, diverse team members, and ones that understand the regional context as well as the community context for which our projects will be implemented. We want to see that you have thought about innovative ways to incorporate equity and social justice and the data that we have access to better inform how we can create a more just and inclusive, comprehensive plan. Equity and social justice is something that we truly believe in from the executive to us here at Wastewater, and we want to see from your team a willingness to be innovative and show us some new ideas that we haven't seen before in some of our projects. This is the equity and social plan. These are the 6 goal areas that we focus on. So I highly suggest that you take a deeper delve into the strategic plan. It sets foundation for us to do our work that's just and inclusive. Some of the goal areas that are articulated in the plan are things like budget, decision, rates and allocations that reflect equity and social justice values. So what Mark and Steve and Annie were talking about in terms of affordability and our rates. But not only just about income, but also about inclusion and ways to communicate this information to our diverse stakeholders and ratepayers. There's also community partnerships and community education that will guide our increased collaboration, regional collaboration around equity. And lastly, these are just some of the ways that currently we do our work to incorporate some of these equity and social justice goals as described in the strategic plan. So we have in our capital planning and implementation, we have equity impact reviews that look at demographic data, equity and social justice work plan that informs our implementation strategies in our work, as well as just targeted outreach and being really intentional about where or how we communicate our messages to the public. There's an effort underway to provide racial justice training by 2019 to all of our employees here at Wastewater to create a more inclusive culture in the workplace. There's also a equity and action implementation committee that oversees and helps implement some of the work in the ESJ plan. And that is it for now. If you have any questions, we can wait till the end.
Hi everyone, my name is Crystal Moreno. I'm here today to represent King County Procurement and Payables. So I'm going to be talking to you a bit about how to get started doing business with us, and just a show of hands, how many of you are already doing business with King County? Okay, so a lot of you are already there. But I do hope that you take some points away, and I'll be available at the networking section if you have any questions. I'll also have some additional resources for you to take home with you today. So a little bit about King County Procurement. We are a centralized procurement office that focuses on 3 types of procurement. The first is architectural and engineering, the second is construction or public works, and the third is technical consulting. And of course, you're going to be interested in the technical consulting section. You may be interested to know that half of our vendors currently are local to the region. And you can see that in 2016, our King County spend was about $2.2 billion. 10% of that was going to capital projects, and about 60% was going towards goods and technical consulting. As already mentioned, King County Procurement already has a set of purchasing values. We try to be inclusive of being economical, so we try to get the best value for our taxpayer dollars. We try to be environmentally aware of the impacts we're leaving behind. So we have an environmental purchasing manager within our office that helps review solicitations and ensures that there's an environmental consideration there. And then we also include equity and social justice, which I'll be going into a little bit more in the slides to follow. But essentially, we encourage small firms to do business with King County, and we do that by offering a contracting opportunities program for small firms. So the first step that you want to take in trying to do business with King County is registering your firm in our online vendor registration platform, or our OVR platform. And the second thing you want to do is certify your company if you think you're eligible as a small firm with King County. The reason why you want to register with King County is, first and foremost, is you'll get email notifications of any solicitations that are being publicly advertised. So instead of going to our website, you'll just simply get an email notification with those details, and you'll be notified. The second reason is our agencies look to these directories to source vendors or firms. And then the third, there is a threshold that our agencies are required to actually use this directory to find firms. Excuse me. So the second thing you want to do after you register your firm is, if eligible, certify your small business with King County. King County has partnered with the Port of Seattle, Sound Transit, and Seattle Colleges to offer a unique small business certification. Essentially, King County has a code that requires us to offer a contracting opportunity program to small firms, like I mentioned. So if there's a solicitation out there that has evaluation points that must go to an SCS firm, or small contractor and supplier firm, those offer incentives to those certified firms. We also consider other certifications that are state certifications, which include MBE, WBE, SBE, and DBE. There is some eligibility criteria that you have to meet in order to certify your small company. You have to have a personal net worth of equal to or less than $1.32 million. You have to be at 50% or less than SBA standard size business size standards, and then also agree to take additional courses with King County. So this certification is offered not by our procurement office, but by our business development and contract compliance department. I do have some of their resources and contact information if you're interested in learning more about certifying your firm. So I've mentioned registering your firm and certifying your firm. I want to emphasize that these are two separate actions that you should consider taking. They are different directories and different signups, so I just want to emphasize that. And you would want to do both to maximize your opportunities in doing business with King County. So I'm going to go over a quick overview of what to expect when you're submitting a proposal to King County. Again, as a firm, you want to ensure that you're registered in our OVR, or online vendor registration platform. Again, this is going to ensure that you get any notification of solicitations being publicly advertised. And if you're eligible, we highly recommend you certify your firm as a small contractor supplier. So you will get that email notice of the solicitation, and you'll go through our online vendor registration platform. That's where you'll review all of the requirements for the solicitation. You'll also see all the evaluation criteria that is being included in the solicitation. So essentially everything that you need to know regarding the solicitation is going to be included. It's also going to list any contact information. So a buyer will be assigned from our procurement office, and that will be your point of contact. They'll be working with the agency project team to ensure that everything is being communicated out. So if you are interested in a certain solicitation, you could then add yourself to the holders list, which ensures that you get any addenda notification. So if there's any updates to the solicitation, you would be notified, as opposed to you having to go to our website and looking up that manually. And then one thing that we really emphasize is during the solicitation period is where you want to ask all of your questions. If you have any clarification questions, that's the time to do it. And then attending our pre-proposal meetings. Again, this is going to give you the opportunity to listen in on what other questions are coming in, ask your own questions. You'll have the opportunity to meet the buyer, who's the contact for the solicitation, and then also be able to meet the agency project team. And then one thing that I want to really emphasize is making sure that you submit your proposal on time. For the procurement office, we cannot accept any late proposals. So even if it's a minute late, we can't accept it. So I just really like to emphasize that last point, is making sure you submit your proposal on time. Currently, we only accept hard copies of RFPs or proposals, so just keep that in mind as well. It's something that has to be in our procurement office by the deadline. So some tips from our procurement office to our proposers is, one, making sure you're registering your firm with King County. I know that there's a lot of registration platforms with the cities and other government agencies, but we want to make sure that you're doing it with King County as well. And then if you're eligible, certifying your firm as a small contractor or supplier. And then if you are interested in certain solicitation, adding yourself to that holders list to ensure that you're getting any addendum notification. And then attending pre-proposal meetings. This is going to give you a chance to talk to the buyer and also the agency project team. And then submitting on time, like I said, is really important. And then whether or not you're awarded the RFP, we highly recommend that you ask for proposal feedback. This is going to help you, whether or not you win, just to get feedback on how you can improve. We also just revamped our procurement website, so we have a lot of additional resources that are available to the public. Those are listed here, but I also have a brochure that you can come and talk to me about if you're interested in learning more. But we do offer intro sessions to how to do business with King County if you're interested in signing up as well. I'll be here afterward if you have any questions.
Okay, thanks for listening. I hope that was informative. We can do another shot and see if anybody has a question at this point. Yes, sir.
Just because I know you want a question, but you're talking about one RFP, and this seems like a rather large company that needs to take on a project like this. So is it incumbent on SES firms and all that to try partnering with the larger firms? Or is the RFP going to be broken up into smaller sections, i.e. asset management versus public engagement and so forth?
Overall, I would say it's incumbent upon to build your team with SES representation. I will clarify, we're anticipating 2 contracts associated with the work, generally separated by the technical services, planning, engineering, environmental science, and then public affairs, public engagement. Any other curiosities? Yes.
How do you imagine those 2 contracts interfacing with each other? They're both going to be aimed at the same end result.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think, if anybody has good input that they'd like to put out now for how, since you guys have to interface, we're happy to listen to that, first of all. Second, I mean, I think it's, incumbent on, any project's going to be big like this, and it's just incumbent to put in good communication protocols and build team chemistry at the beginning so that you can make sure the communication channels are flowing, et cetera. But I mean, I think, it doesn't sound like a sophisticated answer, but it's really hard to do good communication, but it's going to have to be built. Yeah.
With the county's new plan for equity and social justice, is the county gonna stay with small business, small contractors, or are they migrating toward more the WIMBY, women and minority-owned business model?
So for our procurement office, come back here. For our procurement office, it really depends on how the project is being funded. For King County funded projects, it's typically the SCS utilization that's being incorporated into those solicitations. For federally funded projects, it's those state certifications. We have a department, the Business Development Contract Compliance Department, that reviews these solicitations before they go out, and they help incorporate some of those utilization requirements. So it's really coming through that office. They look at every solicitation that comes out before they decide. Does that answer your question?
We have one question in this area.
I was just curious, I forgot what it was called, but the kind of regional stakeholders group.
Regional Leaders Forum.
Yeah, was that, who all would be in that, or what's your vision for that?
Yeah, so what we're looking at would be, it would, advisory group, and it would be comprised of, so elected officials, representatives of cities, government agencies, regulatory agencies, nonprofit organizations, they could be environmentally focused or maybe not, environmental organizations and community members, tribes would be another potential stakeholder as well. So it would be just the idea is to get a really diverse group of stakeholders to be able to weigh in and inform the decision making and to reflect a diversity of experience and expertise. Okay, any other questions about that?
Any other questions? All right, well, so I think game plan wise, we have the room until 4:30. If people would like to chat amongst yourselves, we'll be here as well. The county has shared with you most of our current thinking on this today, so we need to continue thinking and continue to develop that. Our contact information is here. I wouldn't expect to have much more to say on this in the next 4 weeks, certainly. We need to, as I said, keep developing it, keep processing it, working towards developing a scope of work, that sort of thing. But our contact information is there. We will, when the RFP goes out, one thing that we will consider, and because this is a large job and a different job, one thing that we can consider is, I believe it's 21 days we're required to keep it open for, but there is a possibility that we could keep it open a little bit longer. If people have input on that, that would be good to share. But our purpose today was to give you some idea about this so you can start thinking about building teams or how you would assemble yourself for this work as we continue to develop the scope more and get closer to an RFP. So I hope that was helpful, and thank you all for coming.